profusely and profoundly. I do not know what happened, but we are back with everybody should be together again. Kate, Susan, Nikki, everybody. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
All right, and we have Bella.
Hi.
All right, and everybody's back together, and there's everybody. All right, we are back. I don't know what happened, but hey, it's not the internet speeds. It's must be everybody in the world trying to do a live stream and thinking that they are Scorsese.
My God.
But so before we were talking about dating, either single, being a divorced mom. Susan, I know when you met your husband, he had 3 young kids. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I had the opposite of what Kate had. When I got divorced, I didn't have children, just 2 little Yorkies that I fought over with my ex-husband. But so then I met my current husband, and he had 3 5-year-olds, and I had no real experience of little children. It was an interesting transition. I mean, Bella, you weren't on last week, but we were talking about when I met David. I didn't really meet.
With her right now, socially distanced in a park. Yay!
Right.
Or who are dating guys with kids.
For sure. And what I find so interesting sometimes is when someone comes to me, a single parent, and they have kids, one of their first gut instincts is, it's hard enough to be a single parent. I want to meet someone who doesn't have kids, right? And so they enter the dating world with this kind of opposite lens of themselves. Like, I know how difficult it is to navigate this. I don't want anyone else's stuff. And sometimes I'm like, look, let's cast your net out a little wider, right? So it's fine to meet someone who could be accepting of you and your kids, like a Susan, but why don't we also broaden our net to say, let's look for some single moms with kids that are going to get you and get your schedule, and they're going to realize stuff happens and somebody gets sick and you and your ex switch, like another single parent will get you. So I did have a guy named Fred who came in with exactly that mentality. I don't want a single mom. I want someone that has no kids. So I talked him into casting his net out wider, and he ended up getting happily married to a woman that he met online that had 2 adopted girls from China, and they blended this beautiful family of 3 kids together, and the kids are within 3 years of each other, like old girl, then his boy, then a little girl. It's beautiful.
So for me, I guess I have the different perspective here, being the only guy here, and for me, starting to date early on after Nikki and I got divorced, I don't know if it was low self-esteem or being conscious of being that divorced, dad, and then what does the girl immediately think about me that I'm incapable of being in a relationship, because I couldn't make a marriage work, and then I did some therapy on myself, and
Mercedes worried about the girls. Was Mercedes worried about the kids?
No, it was just Diamond. She was.
Diamond?
Yeah.
Diamond.
Diamond was, yeah. But, and then I went to my therapist one day, and I told her, I said, I think I might be a narcissist. And she said, yeah, finally.
Which means you're not.
Right?
Yeah. Never know that you're the narcissist according to a narcissist.
Well, so it's interesting because she said, Hallelujah, right? I mean, she, because, and then she told me a story, and I don't know if this is right or she was just trying to make me feel better. But it basically was a story, the Greek mythology of the guy who was looking himself in the water and couldn't love himself and couldn't give himself a hug and actually died just staring at himself. And so what we worked through is basically, that I was unable to be in a relationship with somebody until I learned to love myself. Right? I was incapable of loving somebody until I somewhat learned to love myself. And what I was doing with all these other girls and all these other things was trying to boost my own ego and my own, bump up my chest, because outside women or being with a lot of girls made me feel better about myself. Right. But really, it was the denial factor. And I know you had something on your website about 7 tips or something about dating a narcissist or being with a narcissist. I'm sure they've been, Kate, you've been a lot of people, women coming to you talking about dating a narcissist. So, Bella, why don't you sort of talk about that and what that means and how people can get over that hurdle if they have it.
Yeah, I mean, I see this. It's probably the number one dating issue that I see in our practice for the people that come to us. It's a pretty self-selecting cohort, but so many of them have been in these dysfunctional relationships, and a lot of it stems from childhood attachment stuff, right? What we saw at home with mom and dad, how we learned how to cope, and little do we know that we bring this stuff and these attachments into our adult relationships, right? So very often I'll get the codependent, or you can call them givers, right? And what they're magnetized towards are the narcissists or the takers, right? Because there's this dysfunctional dance that occurs between these two. So it's really identifying the pattern. And then our superpower is making sure we go into our clients' inboxes in, their dating apps. We're listening to what their dates are like and really making sure that they're not missing any red flags, because you guys know this, right? First marriages have a 50% divorce rate. Second marriages have a 67% divorce rate. Third marriages goes well into the 70s, right? And so the issue is we need to take a look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? Who am I? It's like, I attract really bad narcissistic people. No, you accept them.
Yes.
Like, come to mama, come to papa, right? And that's what happens. So it's really about unwiring those patterns. And so often what I see most with my clients that have been with narcissists is they find good people boring in the beginning, right? Because they're so used to being in a state of anxiety or activation that they think that they mistake that anxiety for excitement. So if they meet someone that's suddenly like, oh my God, I just had a great date. It was so exciting. I was like, red flag. I'm like, your first date was fine. It was okay. I'm like, that's what I want to hear.
Right. So when is it a myth the majority of narcissists are men?
It's funny. Someone else asked me the same question today. I've seen just as many men come through my practice that had been with narcissistically behaving women. Maybe they're not clinically diagnosed, but let's say it was a dysfunctional relationship, as I've seen women with men. I think men, the narcissist myth, people often think it's men, right? And there are certainly men that are narcissistic, but there's certainly women that are as well.
I think, if I can address that,
Please.
I think that from a sort of neurobiological, sort of diagnosable perspective, right? It's probably even. I did speak to, I think it was Megan at the Bill Eddy's people. Anyway, I'm losing my words. But anyway, so it's 50-50, right? But from a cultural perspective, right? And from a what are men's expectations of relationship versus what are women's expectations of relationship, and who's quote dominant, and that from that perspective, I think that narcissism is a specific, narcissistic personality disorder is a specific diagnosis. Narcissism is a spectrum that goes from perfectly normal, like we all have narcissistic, parts of ourselves that's normal, to NPD and beyond, right? And so I think that it's possible that from a cultural perspective and cultural conditioning perspective, men perhaps act out more narcissistic traits that may be normal than men do. But I think from a diagnostic perspective, it's completely even. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And the best way that I think I've heard narcissism summarized is an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. You know, and right, because that's what it was about for me, and it wasn't until I could at least accept who I was and you know, forgive myself for what happened with Nikki, and deal with that wreckage of the past. You know, could I move on? And so that transitions into the next part of dating after divorce. And you know, Susan, I'm gonna bring you into this conversation, and you know, when's the right time? And actually, I'm gonna bring everybody to this conversation because I think it's important because everybody brings a different perspective. But you know, for me, to be quite honest, it was as soon as possible. You know, it was more of a coping mechanism. What'd you say, Nick?
Yeah.
That's
filling
a
the hole.
Okay, I mean, it's a guy thing. We can put us all in a box, but I'm talking about me. That I, you know, immediately, you know, went out as many times as possible and, you know, try to be with as many women as possible.
So did I, by the way. Men. So did I. It's not just a guy thing, because I was like, woohoo, right. I'm free. And I haven't had sex in so long. And I was like, let's go.
All right, good. So yeah, Kate and I. But you know, is there, Bella, do you recommend any, you know, I know there's not a time frame because everyone's different, right? But dating right after, is it a good thing? Is it time to wait? Is it, you know, for me, I had to learn to be by myself.
I see Bella's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something. No, I think that the question you're asking is there a right amount of time to wait until you should get yourself
or when
back?
is right?
When is? And I think that there isn't a right. The right time is when you've done the work, Ben, for example, that you did and you went through and you're like, wait a second, come down to me. And when we all go through that, like, it's imperative to do that work, right? Because whether the majority of this is your responsibility or your ex's responsibility, you have to make sure that you've done the work to get over the bitterness, the wreckage, the hostility, all the bad stuff, right? Otherwise, what are you going to do? Human beings seek out what's comfortable right? And we go do it all over again. So, you know, sometimes people will tell me, okay, well, this person's only been divorced for 2 months, or they're still separated. I'm like, there's good separated and there's bad separated. There's good divorce and there's bad divorce. It is a case by case scenario. So I think once you have done your work and you've processed, you've healed, you know what you did, you know what you don't want to do again, and you know who's going to make you happy, then you're ready to date. And if the thought of dating puts a spring in your step and it excites you, then you're ready.
Yeah. As the single divorced girl dating, who's
our token dater,
who's the one who's dating and also is the one who's dating the, you know, them. I completely agree with Bella, and you know, my experience has been, you know, this is why, right? If you don't take, first of all, there's a difference between dating and being in a relationship, right? So I say to my clients, like, if you're ready to date, go date. Mm-hmm. Go learn. I learned so much about myself through the dating process. I learned what I thought worked, but then maybe didn't, or vice versa, right? You learn about yourself through dating. It's a wonderful playground. But are you ready for a relationship? You know, maybe that's going to take a little bit more time, and dating is going to be part of that process. And I know for me, dating people who are just getting divorced has not worked out for me in long-term relationships, because I've been divorced for 10 years and there's a process that they're still going through that they need to go through. And I don't, you know, also as a divorce coach, like, I don't want to be coaching them through their divorce in our relationship, which is what ends up happening.
Future client.
Yeah. Like, you know, listen to my podcast and like call me in a year, you know, but
Nick, you go ahead.
I think for me, I started dating my now husband right away. but I actually had to take a break from him. Like I knew I loved him, but I needed to take a break from him for me. And I don't know, call it so my oats or call it whatever you want to call it, therapy, whatever. And then I knew, I mean, it was a chance I had to take that he would still be there 6 months, a year later. And thank God that he was, but I needed to make sure I was in the right space to go forward, or we never would have made it this far.
Interesting. The adage of nothing changes, nothing changes, I think, probably pretty much applies to this as well. And that stat that when we were talking about it before, the technical difficulties, but it was such an interesting thing about looking, some of your clients, Bella, do you find that when they're not looking for somebody who's been married or divorced, I mean, at some age, I think that it's pretty a high probability that someone's been, divorced or in a long-term relationship or whatever. But what is I don't know, with the people that you deal with that have been divorced end up being with somebody who's been divorced? Is that an attraction or a common denominator that brings people together?
Meaning I'm divorced, you're divorced.
Right.
Like just like.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, that I am unable to get to the point. But yes, that's exactly what I meant.
I'm glad you said it because I don't have a clue what he said.
She got it. She gets it.
I got it too.
It's a good question. And sometimes a poignant example is when I work with people that have lost a spouse, right? Because widowers and widows sometimes think, okay, you know what? I went on a date with a divorced person and they're still pretty angry, pretty bitter. I can handle the grief of a widow or a widow more than I can handle that. So it's super interesting how people come to this process. So I've seen all of the above. I've seen divorce, widower, widower never married, like you name it, everything. I always tell people, like, cast your net out wide. Love is going to come to you in a different package than you anticipate if you do this the right way.
So interesting.
That's so true too.
Yeah, because I mean, you were saying before too, these FaceTime or video dating that's happening now because of the COVID. And I was just thinking to myself, like, yeah, you want to put your best foot forward just like you would on a first date. But the last thing that you want to hear, I would imagine, on that, whether it's a personal date, in-person date, or over a video chat or a phone call, is, oh, my ex-husband or my ex-wife, like that turn off, right? I mean,
completely.
Absolutely.
I was doing an interview with a female comedian that's based out of LA today, and she shared with me, she's in her early 40s, divorced, and said that she went on she did a FaceTime date with the guy last week, and within the first 10 minutes, he basically said, my mom, like, I hate her. I really wouldn't care if she passed away sooner than later. And I was like, I can't imagine saying that about another human being. Right. Earth. Clearly
on a date.
And she said, my first inclination, because I've been in 13 years of therapy, which she has post-divorce, was, should I want to psychoanalyze him. I want to help him. I'm like, no, you don't.
Run.
No, you don't. Let him go. You can give him the number of your therapist and you can end the FaceTime call right then and there. You can't. And so often the codependents, the givers, the nurturers, right? They want the person with the broken wing. I was like, that's just not a broken wing. That's like a 3-legged whatever, but that is bad news. You got to put that away.
But
Jesus, what a nightmare.
Yeah, well, I guess the question though is, if it's there, it's there, right? And I guess in myself in that situation, as I go on the dates, and we talked about it before, the duck on the water, right? Like everything's great on the outside, floating across water, peaceful as everything, but underneath, kicking like crazy, right? So for me, and all this damage that I had when I was going out with these women, I wouldn't disclose it, but it was still there. So I mean, I guess one way or another, you're whether somebody's
emitted. It's emitted, whether you know it or not. Like this this dude probably had no idea that he wrapped himself in a giant red flag within 30 seconds of the date. Like, hi, here I am, a giant red flag. This guy had no idea, right? And so we emit these issues, and this is why it's so important to do that work, then before you get out there into the dating playground, if you really want to do this successfully and actually meet somebody.
So,
so if you want to do more than date, you want to actually have a relationship.
Have a relationship, right? You want to know. I mean, I did a session with a client. Like, we're literally working through people's like, we're going over what they want, what they need. Like, it is a process to rewire what you think you want versus what you want to be happy versus what you need to be happy. Oh. And so this is part of what we do with people to make sure that they don't end up in that 67 and 73% again, because left to our own devices, especially if you like narcissistic people, probability is not good.
I love the sort of circle of life of divorce and what we have here, right? They go see Kate, right? They work on some issues. Should I stay? Should I go? They go. Then they go see Susan. Susan puts them in a great place and on the right track and mediation. And then they ready for the dating part of it. And then they go, see Bella. So do you work with men and women or just specifically women?
Oh, both men.
Okay, so I come see you. Nikki and I just got divorced. Susan was our mediator. We had a great, outcome. But I'm still a narcissistic ass.
Nikki, get out.
She already did.
Nikki.
No, we got to talk about Nadia because she was the next one. Nikki's done. Susan took care of that one. So I come see you.
I would never. I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. You're great.
So I come see you. What's the process of the Smart Dating Academy?
So first of all, if you were truly a narcissistic ass, you would never come and see me because it's a self-selecting cohort that comes to a dating coach to say, I need help, because narcissists are perfect. They don't need help. I say this tongue in cheek, right? You're a narcissist. So if a normal, lovely man like you came in and said, okay, I want some help, and we would really help you to discern, again, what you've been doing versus what you want to do to find a partner that's truly going to make you happy. I'm like, our goal is to help you date, have fun, get inspired by the process, but then also date with the roadmap for the first time, like who gets in and who gets let out. So we put people online, like you said, we do photos, we write profiles, we do the strategy and the tactics around this, like get the big stuff right. What's your roadmap? Who are you looking for? Who are you not looking for? And then you get the pretty pictures and the profile, which helps you to expand your net. So you start to attract more of the right people. But now you have a rubric for the first time to say you're in, you're out. And then we want people to have a dating funnel. So you're not one and doneing, right? You've got multiple people that you're slowly dating, not banging, hooking up with every day, right? Like you're actually kind of pretending there's a screen, getting to know you with multiple people so that you date with consciousness. And that's when it ends up really successfully. In 10 years of being in business, we've had 0 divorces.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Entering the divorce rate that we just discussed. Think about that.
Wow, that is, and how many years?
Bella.
10 years.
Wow. Okay,
how many marriages?
There's a difference. So most of your clients are coming to you and saying, I want to get married or I want to find a serious relationship, right? I mean, that's the objective.
They're not going, I want to go find a floozy on a one-night stand.
Oh.
You just take her. You don't need me to go have sex.
No.
Darn. Okay. Well, so I wasn't ready. So my scenario wasn't really correct.
Nadia's not here.
No. I'm saying right after my divorce. This was hypothetical.
Right after your divorce.
Right. So you're not millionaire matchmaker or whatever her name is. Anyways, Susan, in your practice, obviously romance plays a huge part in the ending of marriages. Do you usually see the person end up with the person they've had the affair with, and what kind of dynamic does that bring into the relationship, or is that just a job opening?
they almost never end up with the person that is the person in their lives that, I always say, an affair, and this is a divorce attorney perspective, but an affair, almost every divorce I have dealt with in 30 years has had some sort of, sexual relationship that someone has gone out into. But the reality is happily married, fulfilled people do not go out and seek whatever they're seeking in other relationships.
Symptom. Right.
Yeah. And it's a symptom, but it's often the catalyst that will end the marriage. And that is not, because people always say, well, the affair ended the marriage. And that factually might be correct. It might be what brought the other spouse to the table saying, okay, that's it, you've gone too far. But it is hardly ever really what broke down the marriage. And that's one of the reasons why adultery is not usually taken into consideration. A short period of time. I know. It's not usually
Good, Ben.
Very nice, Ben.
Yeah. That was the audience laughing at that joke.
That's
Right. I mean, it's usually definitely, I've seen a few, but I'll be honest, most of them, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I have one gentleman, I've handled 4 divorces for him. He's my gift that keeps on giving. And, he's obviously not gone to see Bella, but maybe next time I'll get him there. But, most of the times when the relationship does go and gets to being a permanent relationship with a marriage or something, it usually will end again. And I've been around long enough to see that.
Interesting. So
do people ever use it as the crutch to get out of a relationship that they're afraid to otherwise leave? Is that a weird question? But I feel like people sometimes do it. Do it to get out of
bad behavior.
Yeah.
Afraid
to get out of a relationship some other way.
Absolutely. It's like an unconscious sabotage. It's like, oops, I didn't mean to leave the computer open and those emails for all to read, right? Like, well, did you though? Right. Yeah.
So
people do that all the time.
I mean, is it when we talk about the first divorce or whatever, 50%, whatever it is now, and then second 70 and so on and so forth, is it fair to say it's because people don't work on themselves and they don't change and they don't evolve and they take the same person to the same next marriage as they did the one before?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of professionals going like this. I mean, I guess that's...
Bella and I are in a complete alignment on this. I mean, all of the work that I do with women in trying to decide whether to stay or go is also to prepare them and heal that and help them work through that stuff so that if they go, they don't repeat this again. Because holy shit, like, why would you put yourself through all of this and then just go and make the same choices,
right?
Over and over and over again. So yeah, absolutely.
I always tell people through this process, there's 2 phases to this. Number 1, you're going to look to find a good partner, right? Okay. But in order to find a good partner, you also may have to learn how to be a good partner. So it's both of these things, right? So you have to find the good person and become that partner.
Yes. And that's true in the relationship, in the should I stay or should I go discernment phase, right? Like, how are you showing up in your marriage?
Right.
Are you right?
Are you
right? What? Are you part, or you're part of the problem, right? Are you communicating? Are you actually, are you going to your friends and bitching about your husband, but does he know all of these things that you're upset about or unfulfilled about, or, are you communicating?
So last week, and Bella, I'd love to get you in this discussion. We talked about bringing that person once that person is deemed, again, no time frame. I don't think it's fair that anybody can. I don't think anybody can give a time frame. But when you bring them, especially when you have kids, into the mix or into the family and introduction to the kids, and hopefully, if they've gone and seen Susan and Kate, that they are in a good place and they're a happy family or a blended family. Is there any recommendation that you have for that introduction process?
I love what Susan described. in her relationship with David in the beginning is you really let your relationship develop its own tree trunk, right? So it's very stable and solid just for the two of you. But also, for example, your situation, Susan, when you had 3 5-year-olds, right? If you've got a revolving door of men or women coming in and out with little kids, right? I'm the mom of 2 kids. Kids get attached really quickly. And when they fall in love with the person you're dating, and then 2 months later, that person's gone, and then there's another person that comes in and leaves, that's really hard on kids, right? It's like abandonment. Again, did I do this again? Mom and dad didn't work out, and now this guy left and this guy left. And so you want to make sure that this relationship, like Susan said, is on stable footing. My recommendation is be exclusive and super healthy, meaning after you've been dating for, let's say, 3 months, then you become boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever your status. And then after that 6 months of that exclusivity, then think about meeting each other's children, right? But see if this thing has longevity and teeth before you bring cute little people into the mix.
Yeah.
I so agree.
Susan,
Yeah, we talked a little bit about last week that, one of the things too is that is also not to wait too long, because you don't know who someone is fully and entirely until you know their children and you know how they are as a parent, right? And I was talking about a guy that I dated for almost a year, and at 7 months, I ended up breaking up with him because I was like, I don't, he was like, my therapist said not to introduce a new person until we're engaged, and I looked at him and I was like, would you ask someone to marry you if you didn't know how they were with your children? And he was like, no. I was like, okay. And I said, like, I don't know you fully unless I know you as a father, and I knew I loved him. And so then, our relationship ended up going another 3 or 4 months because he finally agreed with me at the 7-month part. I was like, I felt like we can't go much further until I know you in your entirety. And it was an organic step at that point, and he agreed, and we ended up breaking up because I was the first relationship right after his marriage and his divorce, and it was like he hadn't had time to individuate and create his own routines with his kids and all of that stuff. But if you wait too long, then you're in this kind of fantasy world of just 2 single people.
Right.
That's not the reality at all, right? When you have kids, that's just not the reality.
Yeah.
Susan, I know that you talked about it last week, but with your experience, but also what you see, what is the proper way of doing it? I know for me it was slow. It was something Nikki had requested of me because she knew what I was up to, and she didn't want that. She was aware enough to not want that for our son and what damage that would cause on top of already the divorce. But with your own experience and then what you see people making mistakes or doing it right.
I've dealt with the topic quite a bit with clients, because probably one of the number one questions I get from clients when they're getting divorced is, when can I date? And then it does become, when can I, introduce them to the kids? Because that's always, as we talked about last week, a conversation that happens in divorce. But, the best way, and I've talked to a lot of therapists about this, and I'm sure that Bella and Kate have information on this as well too, but every therapist has told me that it should be, a brief meeting. It should be kid appropriate. It should not be treated as I had one client who introduced his children to his girlfriend as their new mommy.
Oh God, what?
And let me tell you, he lost custody of his children. He lost physical custody of his children after that happened, based in part upon that. But those children, goodness knows, once it's done, you can't unring a bell. Your ex-wife, and you can't unring it with that girlfriend, who, by the way, didn't end up being even their next stepmommy, because she was the first relationship out of it. So, I've always counseled clients to do it at something like a park or at a party, and somewhere where the children are not sitting at a dinner table having to stare across the table at some stranger who's mommy or daddy's new friend for extended period of time. Do it somewhere where they are, comfortable. And do it when they are ready. Every parent that I have dealt with as a divorce attorney, now I have a very limited scope of my time with them. Like they're all in this moment of divorce when I'm dealing with them. But they all talk about what they want. They all talk about my relationship is important to me, and therefore it's important to me that my children are a part of this relationship. And they do not talk about what's important. I've never had the conversation where a client came in and said to me, at least, as their divorce attorney or mediator, wow, I think my kids are ready to meet my significant other. So
how often do you put that in? Because, I hear this a lot in my group, right? That like people want this in their divorce agreement, that a time period, a time limit, right? Like I don't want my kids meeting new people. Like they want approval. They want to meet them first.
Oh, yeah.
They want, what do you say about that, Susan?
It's funny. We just dealt with this issue yesterday. I have a client that I'm advising as she goes through mediation, and the issue came up, and she wanted a 9-month moratorium on either one of them introducing significant others. And, you can put the clause into an agreement. I do see them fairly often. One we talked about last week, it's an arbitrary time frame.
Right.
Maybe the kids aren't ready in 9 months. Maybe they're ready in 9 weeks. Who knows? As Bella's 100% correct, at least in my experience. Younger children are actually much more open to meeting mom or dad's new friend, and they actually will become attached very quickly in many cases. Older kids are like, hell no, get the F away. I don't want to have anything to do with your new person. Right. So it really depends on how old the children are, where they are. But the other problem with this particular issue is what I said earlier. You can't unring the bell. So it doesn't matter what it says in the agreement. If one of the parents breaks it and introduces the kids, it's done.
Right. And that's something that we just had a comment on Facebook that said, my ex-husband and I discussed the ground rules for introduction with the first couple of weeks of the separation. And quite frankly, we've talked about it before. That's what Nikki and I did. And although, the discussion was a little different because it was about me introducing, Diamond and Mercedes and, the list goes on and on. At the end of the day, when you look at it from the child's perspective and this innocent child, it is not a good thing for them to have a revolving door of whether it's, we're being flippant about the names, but whether they're great women, or whatever they are, it's just not a good thing for kids, because I think it teaches a behavior that's going to hurt them later on down the line. So when Nikki told me that, and she asked me, it wasn't in any agreement. It wasn't, I don't even know what the punitive, response could be to that if somebody breaks the 9-month rule. But, Nikki and I just agreed, like Debbie just mentioned, and it made sense.
Yeah, I see Debbie here said, my ex-husband and I discussed the ground rules and did that. And it's, that is how it really should be. You guys actually had a grown-up, mature discussion about what was best for your son, as you did with everything around your divorce and then post-divorce life. Unfortunately, many people aren't able to do that. Yeah. And, so that artificial time frame, it can be helpful, at least because it's aspirational. I always tell clients language like that. We also put language in parenting agreements that say neither parent shall disparage the other or do anything that shall, harm the child's opinion of the other parent. Mm-hmm. What is that? We truly wish that people would do that. Have I seen people always follow it? Unfortunately, no. But, what we said last week, and I think put a clause in that if the person is going to introduce the children, or if they have, whether it was by accident or I've heard everything, but they at least let you know. Yeah. So that you can then support your children. Absolutely. Not by saying mommy or daddy shouldn't have done that, but by saying, isn't that nice that mom or dad has a new friend or whatever. Meet your children's needs.
Yeah. Triage.
That might be helpful.
What was that, Bella?
If they come home, Yeah, I think Bella said triage, right?
Triage, yeah, like I thought that's what you said.
Yeah, because if your kids come home and they're upset and you're like, and you had no idea this was happening or had happened, like you're not prepared for the response and how to clean up that, that mess or, deal with their reactions for sure.
Yeah. I also hear, and when we talked about this last week, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced the buying your own BS, right? Of what the other partner's girlfriend or boyfriend is like, what, and how to get authentic and tell the difference between you. I mean, for me, it was an understanding that Nikki was going to be with somebody. I mean, it wasn't like she was going to go join a convent and become a nun. Right?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Definitely not. But, so she was going to be with somebody, right? So if you just have that acceptance, I guess all you can hope for, and all I could hope for, is that person loved and cared for my son as much as I did. And look, it's easy for me to sit there and be able to rip Chad apart, who's her new husband, but that's all from an ego standpoint, right? And that's not. And when you strip it all down and you look through it from a non-ego standpoint, he's a good guy. He's a great guy. Nikki way outkicked her coverage, and so.
He'll be so happy to hear that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he'll be happy to hear that. But so, there's a lot of, I think, opportunities where people have to get real and honest with themselves about their person's partner. And I don't, Kate, I'm sure you see that a lot when people are, buying their own BS.
Yeah, they're so, they're so wounded. They're so hurt, and and then they start sort of taking it out and creating a story and a narrative about this other person. And I sort of dig into it, and it turns out 9 times out of 10, like, the other person is just another woman who is looking for love too, and maybe is buying the same bullshit that you bought for 10 years. Like, you did it, right? Or maybe they're better suited. Maybe she's actually a better match for him than you were, which is what I had to deal with. Like, when my ex got remarried, and I would go over there like, he likes her so much more than he ever liked me. And that was a hard pill to swallow. But then also, I left because I knew that I wanted my son to have something modeled to him that was healthy and that was appropriate and that was happy. And like, that's what they got. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, I had to kind of like put my tail between my legs and be like, all right, this is better.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that, when I look at the way Nikki looks at Chad, I look at the way she's happy around him, how she wants to go and do things with him, how she wants to, hold his hand. I mean, she never did that with me, and look, that's because her and I weren't meant for that romantic world. Like, we're meant as best friends, and, but the way that she looks at him, it's clear, if if she's a happy woman. There's an old expression, happy wife, happy life, happy ex-wife, even happier life.
Yeah.
Very true.
So true. So true.
My ex-husband would say that. So.
What's that?
I said my ex-husband would say that.
I think most ex-husbands, ex-wives would. I mean, because it is true. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a joke, but Nick and I don't have to walk around this world with our new partners, bring that garbage into our relationship and that toxic environment and into ours, but also our sons. And it's a much happier being, having a good relationship with your ex-wife. You know what? I think we are coming up. Who knows what the time is after the technical difficulties and everything. But we seem to be running. I mean, as the end, it's okay to say this because we won't crash, but it seems like we've been running for 44 minutes okay here. So, Bella, I want to appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you and your wonderful practice?
You can go to smartdatingacademy.com or follow us here on Facebook at Smart Dating Academy or Instagram. We do a lot of Instagram Lives every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. I'm on there for an hour taking questions, talking about topics, red flags, green flags, all of those things. And we're actually, we've just launched a new product called the Love Lab, where we're getting people a good, fresh start. It's a 3-hour Zoom workshop. So it's June 13th. And there's only 3 slots left, but you really get your, like, what the hell should I be doing with my profile, my photos, messaging, and just to get that really good start to this. And sometimes people can restart after 5 years of unsuccessfully trying dating on their own. So yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
When is that, Bella?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't think I've ever seen Kate pay so much attention to what was going on in this stream. She perked up like this.
There may only be 2 spaces left.
I will text you. Yeah, there's only 2 spaces left, people. Motherfucker.
We normally do one-on-one, so we're like, let's try a workshop. And I thought, I don't know if any seats will go. And then we sold it out, and there was a wait list. So now we're doing a second one, and it's just a lot of fun in a supportive environment where you actually get the brass tacks of what you need. So I wrote a book that's a Mad Libs template for online profiles for Match and Bumble. So you walk out of there with like, here's my profile for Match, here's my profile for Bumble, here's my curated photos, these are my 6 best. So lots of.
And I'm sure that the live streams or that FaceTime or that seminar is now gone because we know we took one spot. But is that book available to people?
We haven't actually put it on the site yet, but probably next month after this Love Lab, we'll put it out on there for people to be able to access.
I will say that I have spent a little bit of time on Bella's site, and there's so much amazing information on that site, on your site. Like it's just great. I love it. So highly recommend.
You guys are amazing. This was so fun.
Well, if you want to join us next week, we can do it again, and we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it without
all the technical work.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a computer just separate stream that just handles the streaming part of this because anyways
we can do a before and after. We're gonna do like a total like live stream before and after as Bella remakes me for my dating life. I've just decided
let's keep doing this as like a progression. As Kate, we'll follow Kate's dating experience with Bella.
Yes.
I think we might have something here, guys. I'm just saying.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
I will tell you what, I did a podcaster in LA. Her name's Nancy Holla. And she had a show with Sherry and Nancy, Sherry Salata, who was Oprah's EP. Mm-hmm. And Nancy came to Chicago, did our process, and she's now happily engaged, got engaged over Christmas.
No way.
Can I ask a question?
Magic.
This is just the naysayer in me, and I hope it doesn't come off across as not offensive, but so you would take me, right? And let's just say I'm not married. I have character flaws. My character flaws have character flaws, right? My defects have defects. And you're going to create a profile for me and create this sort of like good Ben, but is it?
She's
I'm
also
sure
coaching you before that profile is made.
What? What'd you say, ex-wife?
You're getting a little coaching before that profile is made.
Okay, so but regardless, so you said you help write a profile and get all the sort of the ducks in line, so I become a little bit. The package becomes a little better, right? But how do you do that? Lack of a better word, authentically, or how do you, or would you say, Ben, you need to clean up, this part of your life, or you need to, because otherwise you're going to I'm going to put you up, and you're going to ruin my batting 1,000 percentage.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
And what we do typically, 95% of what we do as a practice is really helping people to get it right up here first. Then the pictures, the profile, all of that, like the green flags and red flags are all part of the process here. But what we've seen is we've had so many people just requesting to get that start, right? At least let me get on there with photos and a profile. So what we're not doing in the Love Lab, normally when people are engaging us at the higher kind of one-on-one standpoint, would they come to Chicago? They're meeting with us. We're based at the Four Seasons. We do their photos at my photo studio. I have writers that write their profiles. But in this, you are writing your own answers to your own profile. So it is in your voice. These are your photos. You send me 12 of your best photos, and I tell you why these are the best 6 according to what I know about who's going to click on you. So it's actually super authentic because you're doing most of the curation yourself even before the lab. Then in the workshop, we're learning new stuff.
Yeah, and I hope it didn't come across as I was calling you, but I did do. I never really did online dating, but I always looked at the profile. I went on a few dates.
Do you see my face? Do you see my
Yeah, I
face?
see your face. I went on a few dates, but what I found was, and look, I was as guilty as it too, because I was putting a profile picture on there that obviously was the best picture of me possible, right? The youngest picture, right? I wasn't going to put an ugly or, what I really look like, but I was going to put the best light, the best. And so the pictures, didn't always match, but I hope I didn't say, insult by saying you don't do it authentically. I was just wondering the process.
No, in fact, you bring up the biggest point in online dating. You need to look like your pictures.
Right.
It's the act of self-sabotage if you don't, right? So we're like, no photos that are more than 1 year old, right? And with so many women, it's like, well, my hair was longer and now it's shorter and it's darker. I'm like, every picture of you needs to look like the person that's going to show up
at
for
the
that.
bar. Yeah.
That's it. If not, it is game over. Same thing for guys. Well, I had a little more hair there or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Put yourself out there as you are. There are so many lids to your pot and so many people that are going to love you just the way you are. Put yourself out there and press go. Again, doing that kind of stuff, that old pictures, no judgment, and don't take this as insulting. It comes from that place of, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
As I am.
Exactly.
And so.
Well, that's interesting because that's, another benefit I could see from this COVID, the dating that we talked about earlier on, having a Skype or a Zoom call is you get what you get. I mean, you can blur your background, you can, do certain things, but.
Yeah. And I would also add to this, Ben, that if I read a profile that said, my defects have defects, like, here's my shit, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Because that's a self-aware, that's someone who,
as a pet,
who
not
speaks
a boyfriend,
my language, right? Who what did you say?
I said as a pet, not a boyfriend.
No, but you're self-aware,
right?
You see yourself as you are, and you're bringing authenticity to the table. So to me, fuck yeah, I mean, maybe not like my defects have defects, but someone who's authentic and self-aware is like, hey, I'm not perfect. Whereas the full gloss, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No.
And that's that gloss is easily seen through as soon as they walk through the door, like you talked about, or after a little bit of conversation. But Kate, where can well, actually, you know what? We have this.
Yeah. Put it up, Ben.
This week, coming out Tuesday, we have the amazing Ben Heldfond and Nikki DiBartolo of Our Happy Divorce.
You know what? I mean, that sounded and came across as self-promotion, but I actually really did mean that. I know we're recording, but I didn't know I didn't do it for self-promotion. But Susan, who do you have on your? You had a really good one, by the way, on Monday, the one you released.
Oh yeah.
Susan, the
financial
person, yeah.
Divorce financial funding, Nicole Noonan of New Chapter Capital.
Yep.
It's a really important thing for people to know. Absolutely. But I do actually, so listen to that episode, but I just want to point out the 4 people that you see on this screen are 4 of the top 6 episodes on my podcast, on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I have Kate Anthony, who, by the way, is number 1. I have Bella, who is right up there behind her at number 2. And you guys have moved up into 3 and 5 with the special 2-part Our Happy Divorce.
Hey, which one's part 2? Which one's more popular, part 2 or part 1?
It's so funny. It's part 1, which usually part 2s usually take over a part 1, but you guys are killing it with part 1 and, bringing up the rear in 5th place with part 2. So, but you're moving up on, I won't say who's in number 4 because they're about to get bumped, I think.
That's all right. We'll take them out. Nikki knows some people. She's Italian.
We're all gunning for you, Kate.
Well,
yeah. Hey now.
No, Kate can be at number 1. We like her. Anyways, thank you guys so much. For every, again, weekly, we thank you for everything you're doing for better outcomes, for better lives, for better kids, for better, happier people. And I think that is, if we can all do our little part in this world, it'll be a better place when we leave it. So thank you. I'll put up the socials for a little bit so people can write down if they have any questions. We didn't get to a lot of them in the chat. But if you need to contact any of these Bella, one more time, your social, because I don't have a pretty slide for you. I'm sorry.
Dating Academy.
Smart Dating Academy. All right.
Go on my site. You can find her there. Go see Bella.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, have a wonderful holiday weekend, everybody.
Yes.
Bye. Nikki, go see that. I think it's cool. Go enjoy it.
Thanks, guys.